two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am your host for the evening, and we are beginning the Christmas season and the holly and the shall I say the season's cheer. No pun intended. As we are starting the month with talking about a movie that I remember watching as a kid on VHS, a movie filmed in 1985, the year after I was born, and it was directed by Jeannot, Szwarc, written by David Newman and Leslie Newman. Starring Dudley Moore, John Lithgow, David Huddleston in the Santa Claus role, Burgess Meredith, Judy Cornwell, Jeffrey Kramer, Christian Fitzpatrick, Carrie Hyam, John Berard, Anthony O'Donnell, Melvin Hayes, among others. Let's see what IMDb says about the film. So the legend of Santa Claus is put in jeopardy when an unscrupulous toy manufacturer attempts to take over Christmas. Okay, so heading around the table here, let's start with you, Tammy. Was this the first time watch for you?
I believe so. You said that you thought that we watched it before, but I didn't remember seeing it ever before. I mean, because there's definitely things about the movie I would have remembered, if I'd seen it. So, yes, I really did enjoy it. It was, um, I thought it was a really nice take on a really nice story. And, um, I think, from the elves to the workshop to, yeah, I think it was really, it was neat. It was a fun thing to watch. So, and it was something different to watch than all the normal Christmas movies that are out there. So, I, you know, I really, I really had fun watching it.
Okay. Uh, heading over to you, Brandon.
Yo.
Uh, was this a first time watch for you?
Oh no. I mean, I didn't watch it when it came out because we weren't. When I was that old, we were pretty poor. So the only TV we watched was the black and white, which um, I probably saw it when I was 8 or 9 when we were significantly less poor on TV, and I really loved it when I saw it. Um, it was it is still a classic. I was glad when it came out on Blu-ray, so I was able to have it to my collection because it's still one of my favorite Santa Claus movies. Because as a kid, that always struck me as such a cool thing, and unlike Kim, who says she hates the actor, I actually like Dudley Moore. So I also really liked his involvement in it. It was a fun movie, and to this day, I would say it still kind of adds a childlike quality to it. For those seeing it when they're young, it brings back those memories.
Okay. Is that pretty much it then?
Yep.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Jake. Was this a first time watch for you?
No, it was not. I do want to go ahead and throw something out because I want to. It's something I find interesting, and it is somewhat germane to first-time viewers because it will throw you. It's interesting that a movie called Santa Claus, the movie, where uh, Santa Claus is third billed on the actors. David Huddleston has lower billing than Dudley Moore and lower billing than John Lithgow, who doesn't show up for more than an hour into the film. And the movie's what, an hour and 40 minutes? Get that? And then Burgess Meredith has fourth billing, and he has one scene, although it is an impressive scene. Somewhat. And I find it amusing that David Huddleston, the Big Lebowski, is our Santa Claus here. Slightly different role. I mainly know him from that role. So I came to this very differently from Brandon. I was introduced to it by him. I don't think I'd ever heard of the movie until he's like, well, you got to watch this one. It might have been part of that movie game we did back in the day, or I think it was. But it was definitely one that he was like, you need to see it. And then, of course, there's one particular scene that will be mentioned a few times that I know is one of his favorite clips to use when we do videos. So
I have it.
I'm definitely familiar with that particular scene. If I can recall correctly, I think my initial take on the film and my take on it this go around are not that different. Which is, it's a decent film. I can absolutely see how someone who saw it as a kid might have been drawn in and thought this was just a wonderful movie. Someone who had like a kid sensibility versus an adult sensibility probably would have really enjoyed the movie. But having missed that and come to it as an adult, there's a lot of flaws in this movie. A lot of flaws. And there's also some stuff that just, those polka dotted outfits, you can see them in that picture there. Oh my God, what were they thinking with that? So there's a few things that I'm not crazy about, but I will admit it was fun seeing John Lithgow go full cartoon villain long before he literally went cartoon villain with Lord Farquaad. In fact, I would almost say Lord Farquaad would probably cringe at some of the things this guy does.
Not the buttons! Not the gumdrop buttons!
But and anyway, you can see this guy absolutely torturing Gingy and loving it. Loving every minute of it. He'd probably replace those buttons with the explosive material that we learn about later on. So yeah, overall, I like much of it. It's a good way for us to kick off our holiday batch of films. I definitely think this is an appropriate way to kick it off. And I'll look forward to talking about it. But yeah, I definitely don't love the movie. And I have a feeling that this is a poster child for ones where nostalgia is a huge player.
Oh yeah, I think it's a great movie to show a kid, but a lot of kids' movies, I don't think.
When you're
like for instance, the Santa Claus was one for me that I didn't get when I was, because I didn't see it until I was an adult, and I was like, yeah, it's all right, it's funny, but the way they did the elves annoyed me. But you don't think that when you're a kid. When you're a kid, you're like, ooh, they're all kids like me.
Right.
And that's, but that's the thing is each movie has, I think it's just like when you watch it. I mean, Dane made a point that one year that sometimes nostalgia takes the way. I don't agree with him fully because his point was that means that Scrooged and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation are crap, which I disagree with soundly. But I still
Yeah,
say
he made that point a little too harshly. I do agree.
I do say that there is a point to it, but just not to the level that he did. But yes, I agree with this. His role in this is great, and this is the clip, by the way.
Oh, that's fantastic. How do you turn your face so red so fast? For free?
Clip.
So, for people who haven't seen the film, that is his reaction to the suggestion that toys should be given away at Christmas. And of course, yeah, we'll get to that character. He is fun to talk about. And apparently, Lithgow was a little bit dismissive of this film, but he's like, but strangely enough, in Britain, it's what I'm known for.
Honestly, Tammy made a comment when we had gotten done with the movie, saying, "Oh, you could technically go into the first episode of Third Rock from the Sun after seeing that ending." But anyways, moving onward, I saw this first when I was 6 years old. I believe that my mother had taped it onto, I think it came on to TV, and she taped it on a VHS, and it became a relatively traditional thing to watch this movie around that time. And for all intents and purposes, for the longest time, I thought David Huddleston was Dan Haggerty. From Grizzly Adams, or whatnot, because I always looked at him and thought, yeah, Mountain Man. So, as when I found that it wasn't Dan Haggerty, in fact, that played Santa Claus, it was David Huddleston, I was like, wow, you know. But I'd grown up on Dudley Moore and things. Like, I remember his teen comedy that he did with Michael Cameron, Like Father, Like Son.
He died too early.
Yeah. But Dudley Moore has an interesting British humor. It's like he's a very short man. Very short. He reminds me of the humor of Mr. Bean a little bit. Just a little bit. You know, like what if he had, you know, gone onwards. But I always liked this particular Santa Claus because of its origin story, because of the fact that, you know, it's Kris Kringle and his wife that are going up to, like, towns that you probably would never heard of, bringing toys to the kids or whatnot, and then they get set upon by the elves, saying, okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to live forever. This is your new home. Welcome to your new home. Everything has been prophesized. Oh, here's your bed.
Yeah.
I thought that was unique because it kind of seems like magical, and this was done around, like, you know, the never-ending story times. So
Right.
Everything for kids, at least around that time, was fantasy, you know, and you had to go a long way to believe in something. And I look at this growing up watching plays as well. So when it comes to the polka dots and all that jazz of the elves and whatnot, it's not that far off from what a director would have found for his own crew. So someone who might have had some stage background probably was behind the clothing aspect of the elves. Plus, it probably went well with the low budget that this was, since we had a lot of montage.
Now we just need that film from Scrooge, The Night the Reindeer Died.
That would be funny. But yeah, I enjoy this movie. It warms my heart to see, you know, Dudley Moore plays a character called Patches. You can see the excitement that he has as an elf and with all of his ideas. He is excited to show them and try to prove himself to Santa Claus. When they don't fall through, you kind of feel for him. So, but let's go around and I think we did first impressions. Let's start where the film begins. So we do get this whole beginning here, like I said, with them getting welcomed by the elves. In fact, they come in a horde with blessings and cheer, whatnot. They're like, "Welcome to your new home." What home? I don't see a home. Wait for it. There it is. And they walk into the workshop.
Wait for it.
And they see all the elves at work, and then they bring him to a double door, and then you see the one thing that I think it is one of the magical things of this movie is when he gets to those double doors, and he opens up the double doors, and there's toys that line either side, and it's floor to ceiling, and it goes all the way back for miles. Like this toy shop has no end. So I think that's why for a little bit I believed in Santa Claus until I was about 8 years old. Walked into the living room, seeing my mom set up a railroad train. That was going to be going around the Christmas tree. So, but in any case, I believed in the magic of Christmas. I believed in the magic that there might have been someone who stuffed himself down a chimney just to give us toys every year. And I believe you should keep your children's imagination protective, at least until they find out on their own. Or should you always keep? Actually, that's a good question. If you guys had kids, would you have kept them in the dark about the fact that there is no Santa Claus, or would you have told them early on so that they weren't hurt later on? No answer.
Honestly, the thought crossed my mind while I was watching this, and I couldn't come up with an easy answer. Of course, the way things are going, who knows if that will ever be an issue. So,
What about you? Would you have enlightened your child or kept them believing? Tammy?
Oh, I didn't know you said me.
Yes, I did.
Well, I don't know. We told the cats that Santa Cat is.
But if you had a child, would you
That
keep
is-
them in the?
They are my children. I told them Santa Cat's coming.
They don't count. I mean, actual children, like
Oh,
flesh
a
and
human?
blood.
A human?
Yes, human.
A human? I don't. I'm trying to remember how old I was and how it came about that there was no Santa, you know.
Mhm.
So I guess, I would tell them, by the time they got, I would probably nicely tell them by the time they got to, I don't know, maybe 11, 12, just so they wouldn't get ridiculed by their friends for like believing, you know, just kind of like, or I like said, I don't remember how I found out. I don't know if it just kind of like, you know, faded away thing or whatever, like you're kind of like too old to go sit on Santa's lap. Okay,
Mhm.
and how it went, or
How about you, Brandon? Would you let your if you had a child, would you let your child believe till they were old and gray, or would you enlighten them earlier?
Well, our cats have not known yet that Santa Paws isn't bringing them their cat treats. You know. Oh, eventually,
those Santa cats coming to your house too?
yeah, they come to give good gifts of wet food to the little kitties. Kim and I go shopping for the cat every year for give Santa Claus, literally claws for the kitties, But as far as I don't know how I would react to it. I'm sure they'd figure it out. I mean, I remember um, when my mother told me that Santa Claus didn't exist. I'd already figured out about the Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy and all that, so it wasn't a long leap.
Okay.
But I still remember it, which tells you how much it affects,
So as we learn,
Well, David, do you remember how you found out?
I already said that.
Oh.
I was 8 years old, and I walked into my mom setting up a train set.
Oh, okay, that was what that was about.
Oh, so you weren't listening.
Well,
Anyway.
Catch that was how you found out.
But in any case, so a lot of this beginning stuff in this movie is Santa Claus getting to learn that he has been chosen. There's a ceremony that's called Season's Greetings, which is kind of cool, which is led on by Burgess Meredith in this long.
And his mighty mustache.
Yeah, this would have been a great one for the mustache
I guess
matinee.
they were more like mutton chops almost. It was something.
Mutton chops.
But yeah, I mean, he had several elves carry his long whiskers in with him and his long whiskers out with him. So, but I still saw the penguin in his face and his voice. And I also I don't think this wasn't that far from his role in Rocky.
See, I always remembered him from his role in Popeye, where he played Peppy.
See, I've only seen that movie like maybe 3 times. So what? I don't think of him as happy as much as maybe
My father loved that film, so as a kid I saw it lots, which might be why I like that one too, because nostalgia.
Well, seeing this as an adult, I did not realize how much montage was in this movie. But there is quite a little bit of montage once he finally
Yes.
takes the 8 reindeer, including the 2 that he originally came with, out, and it goes through the years like really fast with that montage with the kids being happy and getting their toys and whatnot. But it gets to a point in time where Santa Claus is actually pretty freaking tired. In fact, he like almost falls asleep in his porch.
Well, yeah, because he's up all night. I mean, not up all night, but up on many nights because he's up as long as it takes to deliver to all the children of the world. So, of course, he's tired when he gets back.
So he's suggested by his wife and his head assistant to take on someone who would be more of an assistant, who would take on the roles in the workshop. And so there are 2 elves that seem to be relatively competitive with each other, and one has like the everything should be done by hand and carved precisely so, like the old school way of doing things, where it took a while. Whereas Patches wanted to do with the way of progress, do so with machines and whatnot. Only I don't think he realized that how fast his machines were going, they were cutting corners.
I think Patch, when you get introduced to Patch, he's taking care of the reindeer, but he's a man of ideas, and he wants to go from one to the next to the next to the next, which he's got good ideas, but when he implements one, he's already thinking of the next one, so he rarely thinks things through. He just wants to keep going one to one to one.
Speaking of going to the next, I did want to say, and I guess it didn't fully click in my brain how fast we were going through already. We kind of completely skipped over that opening sequence where we see Santa before he becomes Santa,
Yep.
where he's Uncle Claus.
I love that.
I just want to say I really like that scene. It feels like the start to a better movie, but it's like it's a portion of the story you rarely see in movies. A full-on origin, you could say.
Well,
You
unless
talked
you
about the
count,
magic. What's up?
unless you count that Rankin Bass one where he asks all the little kids to sit on the lap. And
Well, yeah. So don't mind that, little boy.
The Burgermeister.
But I just wanted to say it was nice getting to see him and the missus before, the whole thing, and it was an interesting variation of the theme. But like I said, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
I also think this is the first Santa Claus movie that was made that attempted to tell the story, from start to finish.
They wanted to show all of the origin of things like they did in the montage, like how the naughty and nice thing came to be and how how all the various things like
wasn't there
hearing the poem recited, and it's like and then the scene next where he's eating a bunch of celery.
When the naughty and nice came about when the boy was futzing with a cat, I thought that was cruel at the time, and I think I find it a little cruel now, because even for the sake of acting, if he really treated that cat like that, I wouldn't have wanted him having a hold of my cat in any shape or form. So
I was going to say something about the beginning too, real quick. Sorry. When we watched it at first, I was like, I was just like, how could a Santa movie start out with Santa dying? I
All
was
right,
just
end the movie.
Oh,
staring at it going, oh my God, they're dying. They're going to die.
oh
Look at
yeah,
it. Look at
they
what
did.
it.
They did kind of die for a moment, didn't they?
Yeah. And it was just like freaky. I was like, what's
Well,
going on?
the
That's right.
Santa Claus starts with Santa getting killed. So, well, sort of.
That's right. Right after they went from giving that whole town the toys, they ran into a really bad snowstorm, and even the reindeer like kind of keeled over, and the wife went first, and so did he, and then all of a sudden you saw a star in the sky, and after the star you saw the the horde of zombie elves that came. No, I'm not. I won't say zombie elves, uh, but you can almost the mass of elves that ended up showing up. It was a little weird, a little. Um, I'm sure it could have been presented a little bit better, but it was still magical to me. I had actually entirely forgotten about this whole entire beginning. And the fact that you mentioned that they died, I've always kind of just not thought about it, but now thinking about it is like, you're right. They killed off Santa before they even began. They killed off Santa just in case the movie got killed at the box office. But in any case,
What you don't realize is that Santa really is dead, and that the whole thing is a fever dream that he had before he died.
ah, ah, ah. Anyways, it's a very good fantasy, if anything, to be told, hey, you're going to be fulfilling a prophecy, which means you're going to have. But we never had children of our own. You're going to have the whole children of the world to take care of. So, but we do have quite a few montages, like I said, that bring it through the years. And then, of course, we have the assistants battle. What did y'all think about the two assistants and their different ways of doing things?
Well, if you go back, it depends on how you look at it. If you look at it as in, craftsmanship versus, say, maybe exporting to China to make cheap goods, then yeah, I can understand that. But of course, if you also look at it from a World War II perspective, for instance, Germany was the crafted right and slowly, but the assembly lines eventually outnumbered and beat them in the war. So, it's all on perspective. Patch could have won, and it showed clearly that he was going to be successful, but instead he decided to be reckless and impulsive, and that damaged his machine, which damaged the final product.
I'm not so sure that he made a decision to be reckless, but it's more of
He didn't make a decision. He was reckless.
Yeah, right.
But,
But like the thing, there's a little thing that what was it? Puffy, I guess was the other guy's name, or whatever it was.
Goober, maybe?
Was that?
Was it Goober?
No, it wasn't Goober. It was it was Puffy. Yeah. So Puffy was all about the one thing that Patch thought was a wasteful waste of time is a little thing called quality control. And Patch was all about efficiency. And yes, his machine was efficient at creating product. Now, one of the things that I've got to say I wonder about with this, it really reflects poorly on Santa. Really reflects poorly on Santa. that he just looked at the big pile and then he looked at the little pile and he's like, well, obviously Patch won. Like, he didn't take and look at any of the individual toys. And if he had, that probably would have changed the whole movie. But, yeah.
But what Patch didn't realize either is you have to maintain machines.
This is true, but this machine was breaking down on its first run.
Well, his fellow
You have to
worker that helped him put the machine together was and did in fact say something to the fact that, hey, I think that this machine is going faster than it should. Like, he realized something was wrong. And Patch was like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just all in the face of progress, you know? So he was excited about the stuff getting made, and it looked like it was getting made. He didn't see the inside workings of the things, but that the screws weren't finding the holes and things like that. These things were coming out already made, so he was like, you know what? It all looks good to me. I'm not going to double check my work. I'm just going to believe in my work and show it to the boss.
In all fairness, the original work that they did was fine. It wasn't until after he started like really moving it and decided, I'm going to double the speed of the machine, that the machine started screwing up. I mean,
and he
again,
built it to go that specific speed. He didn't think that if he added speed to it that wasn't in his original designs, that it was going to fuck up. But you were saying, Brandon?
I just think that if you look at it from an assembly line perspective, there are assembly lines that are successful and those that aren't. But which is why, really and truly, which I think the end product of the stuff after the movie, at the end of the movie, where Patch and the other guy end up gaining like equal leadership roles at the end, is because, well, you need innovation, and Patch's innovation, but you need somebody who can check that innovation through quality control, which is the other excuse me, which is the other one, where he could check behind his work. So together they actually could make a lot more toys a lot more efficiently and with high quality. It never had to be one or the other in the first place, which they learned later which is a lesson learned for later.
And honestly, when those kids ended up having the toys break down, and you ended up seeing all the wood that was sent back. When it came down to it, actually, before Santa could even really say anything, Patches did the only thing that a good soldier would actually do. He laid down his sword and said, "Here's my apron." And but then you see his reaction to watching Puff get the apron, and saw his disappointment. But I believe it's within one of the years that Santa Claus went, and I think, yeah, it was the year before this this decision of having an assistant, is when he met a young boy who didn't have a home, and there was a little girl as well who lived in a rich home. But I think the only person we saw that had anything to do with the child was her governess. I don't think that was her mother or her aunt.
No.
I think it was a governess that was, and I didn't really like the governess at all. Up until she actually ate that lollipop and was up in the air. But I did not like how she was treating the young girl. Did any of you guys like how she was treating her?
I mean, she's supposed to come across as the slightly wicked step aunt. I mean, it's not like her step uncle was, a nice guy.
No. And I didn't know that her step uncle was dude until later.
And there were two sides of the same coin, which was 80s culture.
Yep.
They brought a lot of the 80s in those sections.
So, what did we think about the orphan kid as a character?
Well,
Exactly.
he did what he was supposed to do. He was fairly likable, kind of little bit bratty, typical 80s sidekick kid.
He was the plucky little orphan. You know, yep. I think
Yep.
I kind of lost my train of thought.
So, we have this kid who we see that he is a little bit starving. You know, he's counting whatever money that he's been able to scrounge up, and he watches this Santa Claus that I believe is belling away for the Salvation Army, and he pockets some of the change that's in the thing, and then he pulls out a wino bag of drink, and so that's almost an opposite reaction to watching something like Miracle on 34th Street or something like that, you know, because in there you've got the honorable Salvation Army bell guy, whereas here this guy's just a drunken asshole.
So, which version of Miracle on 34th Street, the color one, or the commercial for like the department store?
The original.
So the commercial for the department store.
No,
That was the original. It was the black and white, and it was all about. It wasn't Macy's. It was the. I can't think of the name of the store, but yeah, it was all about that department store.
yeah, it was definitely about the department store, but I still liked it better.
Well, it was shorter.
Yeah, it was definitely shorter.
But yeah, they had two versions of that film, both with the same actors. It was just one was far more of a commercial for that department store, and the other one was a lot longer and focused more on the story itself, which one could say that there's a like for both.
Yeah, I would have to say so. But I think this kind of shows some of the attitude of the times a little bit, like to show that the Christmas cheer is not so much, and things are not so hunky dory, so to speak. At least in this day and age, and so when the kid actually meets Santa Claus, it's not that far off from his point of view. And he when he tells him he's Santa Claus, he's like, "You're a nut," you know. But then he does his little twinkling thing and brings him to the sleigh, and he's like, "Whoa, how did you do that?"
I do like how Santa actually does describe why all the poor kids don't get toys from Santa. It's because the poor kids don't believe in Santa anymore. That's why. Not because they're poor and we're in that type of society.
So that means only the only ones who get presents are the ones who actually believe.
Exactly. That was the idea. I mean, he said so much to the kids, like, well, how come I didn't get any gifts from you? And it's like, well, I give it to the kids who believe in me. And, well, he had lost his belief a long time ago.
Well, yeah. That just goes to say that some people grow up on the wrong side of the railroad tracks. If you get my drift. And some of them just go on doing bad things. And some of them grow up and do great things. It all depends on what you do with your reality of things.
Well, it's like that kid on the Polar Express that was on the wrong side of the tracks, and he was losing his belief in Santa Claus. So he's like, well, this might be his last year. And but he got his belief renewed.
Yep, something quite similar to that. But the kid and Santa Claus end up hitting it off, and I love how he gets to have the kid say "yo," and which makes the reindeer go. And I like the fact that he allows the kid to have the reins a little bit. It makes him have a little fun before he actually has to get down to work. And
that was
what?
quite a ride Santa on when he took the reins, wasn't it?
Yeah, quite a lot of trust too. But in so doing and having him come along with him, I think he got the kid to believe in him. And so when he said goodbye to him and left him with the little girl, which the little girl has a moment with him too. She actually takes like some of her Christmas dinner or whatnot to him in that nice bowl, and he ends up having a meal for the night, which helps him, and they she seems to have a crush on him. And so when he leaves him with her, he says and promises, hey, next Christmas Eve, you and I have a date. A day to hang. So it's like it establishes a relationship with them two. But while Santa goes back and has to deal with setting up a new assistant, and when he goes out and delivers all these toys that Patch has made, and they all come back, it's the aftermath of all of that stuff. It kind of has some stuff happens to the little girl in her ballet class, and as well in on the streets with some of the kids. I guess the orphan gets roughed up by a bunch of some of the other guys. They end up taking on some of the tough, rough crowd that the toys left behind.
I think, yeah. Basically, they are sort of standing up for Santa when the whole world's trying to turn against them, and that's why they're getting into scraps.
Yeah. So Patches ends up turning in his uniform, and he ends up leaving the workshop and going, taking a bunch of the magical eatery stuff that the reindeer used to fly with him to go out and make and try to do something to make Santa recognize his work.
Oh, he knew how to make this stuff, but much like Patch, he did the same thing that he did with the assembly line. He acted without thinking.
Yeah. But it's at this point in time that I think we meet John Lithgow's character, where he's in court.
Easy.
What do y'all think about that court scene?
Well, I can say one thing about it.
It was fun.
That makes me a sad panda.
When I saw those
Well,
dogs,
probably not as sad as the one that was decapitated and turned out to be full of sawdust and nails.
and broken glass for some reason.
Yeah, basically, yeah, he's on trial for being a shitty human being. And, yeah.
Apparently, Patch was running those assembly lines too.
Yeah, Patch didn't realize that this man had gotten in trouble before, but he was standing in front of a storefront watching all the stuff leave, and he was like, "Oh."
Yeah, I thought that was hilarious because they'd ordered all the stuff to be taken from the shelves. He thought it was because they were being bought. All the stuff is just flying off the shelves.
So when Dude came back to his office and saw him in his chair, I thought this part was actually kind of funny when he kept disappearing on his butt. Yeah, that part was awesome. I like some of John Lithgow's reactions to things. I think that's why I liked Third Rock from the Sun, which happened, I believe, after this. So, which is why I
after, yes.
And Lithgow plays another lovable character like that in Dexter.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's right. He did show up in Dexter.
And actually, I just finished reading Pet Sematary, which the recent version, he plays the neighbor and is one of the best things in the film. But, yeah, he was a much more decent fella there. Here, not so much.
Yeah. Here he was a city slicking car salesman.
He was. That's being kind. Well, I mean, let's put it this way: he's introduced giving testimony before Congress, and he is by far the slimiest person in the room. But yeah, basically, Patch mistakenly thinks this is the guy to talk to, and he's making a sales pitch about, why don't you try this, and it's, I do love that reaction to, the idea of giving away free toys. That is a classic.
Well, I will say that, do you want me to play it again?
Sure, why not?
I will say that it is a good reaction.
Oh, that's fantastic. How do you turn your face so red so fast? For free?
How do you turn your face so red so fast? But, I mean, it is a good... I mean, he looks at it and he realizes, like most of these businessmen do, sometimes you got to put money into it in order to try and do a rehabilitation campaign. And this was dropped in his lap right when he needed to revamp his image.
Yep.
So when Patch comes in and basically offers some almost no money down other than advertising and distribution, which Patch also agreed to do. It's to
Yeah.
me,
When he learned he didn't have any to worry about a payroll, he
Yeah.
was over the moon. He was
Well, yeah. He said all he needed was himself. So, and I guess the first thing that they had happen, what did they call it? Christmas? The Christmas pop, or what was it called?
the Puce something I remember.
Yeah, because
the Puce
that one
pop.
assistant was like, just think if we had if we had a sequel to make of it, maybe we could call it Goose something or other.
Puce.
Goose Pops. I think that's what they were called. But I love how it was a sensation. And a little bit Willy Wonka when they floated up a little bit. So, but the clause in the whole thing was that before, I mean, Patches was more concerned about going back to the North Pole and showing Santa his progress. His whole idea was that he was just trying to get back in Santa's good graces. He never meant to take away Christmas from him, you know. And you could tell that some of these products were giving Santa some stress because he kept stressing out about. I mean, even Puff came to him with like this doll that evidently wet itself only, and he was more worried about Christmas too, taking over the market. What do y'all think about that whole thing once they found out that the candy canes, in fact, exploded if they were heated up too much?
Oh well, I mean, with that, you also had them catching it, but only partially. So, I mean, you had the one kid, you had Joe basically getting bailed out, basically taken by the goon squad
Yeah.
To the factory where Patch is, and then you had the little girl actually did hear about it in time for Santa to get, because the original lollipops were super successful, but the candy canes were so much more powerful that they blew up, which also shows Patch's carelessness.
Well, and two of the reindeer ended up getting the flu, so he was 2 reindeer down for coming and doing things. I mean, it was basically midsummer that he was flying to the rescue of Joe. Santa Claus was.
And they were going to do Christmas in July. Or as Lithgow was going to propose it, Christmas 2.
Which I did like the look of his
So
flying
creative.
vehicle. What did anyone else like the look of his flying vehicle?
Oh, yeah.
It was interesting.
I love the designs in this. We get to production design. I have a lot to talk about, but
Yeah.
It's just kind of a cool effect, and I liked that they had that following there. I also like how when the police finally get onto him, because the girl goes to the police essentially, and they're raiding his office, and he just takes the candy canes, jumps out the window, but eats too many of them, ends up flying out to outer space.
Yeah, that was classic. At first, I thought he
He
was
got
just
carried
gonna
away.
explode. At first, I thought he was just going to explode like right there, or whatnot, and then you'd see like candy cane droppings all over the place.
Well, you know what I have to say that.
You know, for kids.
Damn straight.
For that matter, we could actually play the Weird Al version of "The Night Santa Went Crazy."
Yeah, really.
That's a classic song.
But in any case, so we do have Patches finding Joe, and Joe at first is actually negative towards him because, to all intents and purposes, he's the reason why everything has gone to shit, and he knows it. And Patches kind of helps him see the real reason, and he actually starts having fun in that vehicle and he takes out.
It goes to a point that was made early in the movie where Santa visits him, and he, for that Christmas, and gives him a Christmas gift, which was his carving of Patch, because he missed Patch. He did an elf portrait, and which you also see a carving of Patch being made at the beginning of the movie when he does his first elf portrait, just imagining what they would be. But then when Joe sees that, he automatically realizes, oh wait, I'm this is me, and Joe's realizing, oh well, maybe it is, and that helped win him over.
Yep, I agree. That was a nice little touch because I think Santa was really missing him, and I mean they did know that he left, and he was sad when he was gone. Patches is an interesting character, so but in any case, Santa Claus and the little girl end up going after them, and I guess what he does is he suggests the super duper loop de loop, or I think that's what it was called,
The super duper looper.
super duper looper, which I guess is just kind of like where they fly around in a loop, and right at the exact time when the darn thing explodes, they both fall into the back of the sleigh.
Right. This scene was one of the ones I was thinking about with my intro. This is a nice chance at literally circular writing, bringing things back around, but it makes no freaking sense at all. They just wanted to do the loop-de-loop. That's all.
Air brakes.
It was
Even that made more sense in context, but
it was a fun scene, to be honest. I thought it made you think, okay, what the, for a moment, but it ends up working out, and I guess you get to see Patches with everyone else at the workshop, and I think the little boy was there too. And all that jazz. So at the end of everything, though, we do see John Lithgow's character in space, floating out to the great beyond, and that is the one that Tammy thinks that. Okay, after this, he came down as an alien to Earth.
Makes
nice
sense.
version.
He lands on an alien planet with severe brain damage due to the lack of oxygen. And when they manage to revive him, his personality has completely changed. There you go.
Yes.
I did like as a kid the whole idea is like, well, that Santa would basically adopt the two kids, and I thought that was a great like little thing because as a kid, you always like, yes, I've always wanted to live at the North Pole. That would have been that was a great thing for me as a kid. Just like I'm sure at the end of the Santa Claus movies, those kids being in the North Pole would have probably been a fantasy as well for many of them.
Okay, for a second there, I thought you were talking about the Santa Claus movie where we had the multinational sweatshop going on. And that may have been populated the same way that this was. Because when you think about it, again, as a kid, it's a great way to tie it up. The kids get their happy ending. Santa and the missus get some actual kids of their own. It's a great, but when you really stop and think about it as an adult, you could say they basically kidnapped them.
Orphans. I mean, who are they kidnapping them from?
Elves.
Well, technically the girl had a home and a family, even though technically.
I was going to say the only family she had got. He's in space.
Yeah. Right.
So, I mean,
but I mean, he was about to be arrested anyway. So they were probably already. What's that?
I still think that lady was who was taking care of the young girl. I still think she was just a governess.
I wouldn't even use that fancy a title. I think Lithgow straight called her an Annie at one point. Like
the stuff would have gone into a trust for her, and she'd have gone into an orphanage back in the day.
What I was going to say was like he was about to be arrested. The state was probably already making plans to put her in a home somewhere. So it's like, but you know what I mean? Like basically, that's how the world would see it. Now, looking at it slightly different, again, as an adult, just looking at it, not with taboos and laws and all that stuff shoved to the side, it's like he found a couple of stray cats and took them home. It's the same thing.
Well, admittedly, I mean, as far as Joe is concerned, I mean, who was going to miss him? The street?
Yeah. He's like, can I keep... He takes them home and shows them to the wife. Can I keep them?
I could see him doing that too, David Huddleston as a character.
Right.
I also think it's funny how he eventually wore the red suit that Patches suggested as the color. Later, we actually see him wearing a green suit.
I like how brown is the original color. It was one of the colors they suggested. It's like, brown.
Well, like they were originally wearing brown tones when they were doing their thing, right?
True.
Well, and then, of course, green, which some cultures have them in green. Père Noël actually is in green usually.
So, now that we're at the end of things, what did we think about the production?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, the way they constructed the Santa's, the North Pole. I bring the Santa Claus up a lot, but that's because this is what this reminds me of a little bit in some ways, is the construction of the North Pole itself. They made it into a living, breathing North Pole. Everything is lovingly constructed. Everything looks like a toy shop.
I mean, the reindeer look the same.
even the Santa's even Patch's car is a toy, and I love the way that they've got it worked out. It's just amazing. I mean, other effects, were stock standard for the time. Nothing amazing, but nothing really terrible for the 80s. I mean, mid 80s, it wasn't too bad.
I like the choreography of the elves during the season's greetings. That whole setup where they started to walk around in circles and then did opposite things. If you really looked at it, it actually was pretty unique. For when the snow fell on them and they started shaking hands with each other, and then they just started circling and then doing opposite circles, and the way that it went about, I thought that was cool. That production aspect of it was cool, and how they ended up to the music, taking and doing their craftsmanship. Like when each time they pounded their hammer into the nails and whatnot.
Elms.
But I think the North Pole and the whole origins concept are those are the cool things about the production.
I would say, personally, I really liked a lot of aspects of the production. But again, I'm not a fan of those polka dot costumes. They're just, ugh.
Well, that's just your personal preference.
I know. It's not that I don't think it looks like it's a flaw in terms of they obviously couldn't afford better or whatever. I just think
you just want them to look like something that comes out of a Lord of the Rings or
No, I don't. I want something to look less like it comes out of a children's toy box. But I guess that's what they were going for.
Well, yeah.
And so I fully understand. Yeah, I fully understand why they did it. I think I know why they did it. It just doesn't do it for me.
Aesthetically, it looked like a toy shop that was. I mean, everything was toy based,
right? But again, yeah. Well, like in Patch's machine looks like an overblown toy, really. All his machines do, really, when you think about it. So it at least it has an internal consistency to the production, which is great. I give them. It doesn't really do it for me, but I don't think it's a bad job, if that makes sense. And again, I do love the hair and makeup aspect of it. I love Dooley and especially Burgess Meredith's character. That was some impressive facial hair.
Indeed.
And Huddleston as Santa. I will say, both in terms of the production, the way they dressed him up, the way they did his beard and everything, and his actual performance, I'm going to say this is kind of, I guess, a backhanded compliment because it's very safe. It's very safe. It feels exactly like you want Santa to feel, which means they weren't breaking any new ground or doing anything creative with Santa, but they did a really good job, if that makes sense.
But the question is, are we really seeking some sort of artistic interpretation on a kid's film? I think the whole aspect of it, when we look at it, is really this.
For kids.
But the one thing where I say that might be a little bit of a flaw is you kind of want your characters to stand out a little. Even though kids are not necessarily going to be differentiating over every little minutiae, the fact that Santa is basically what you expect Santa to be. kids are basically what you expect the kids to be. Really, it's the villain who gets a chance to really shine because he is able to do something. Lithgow is able to do something a little freer with his character, if that makes sense. I feel like he had more ability to make the character his own. And even to a kid, that's the kind of character that I tended to remember, I think. You know what I mean? So it's like, so it's a good thing and a bad thing. Like, that, I think that's what I meant to say.
Well, I mean, kids are there because they want to see Santa Claus and what he's up to, but you're going to need a memorable villain to stock into that. And then, I mean, there are a lot of Santa Clauses that kind of push the envelope, but a lot of them aren't in kids' films. Like, I mean, Santa's Sleigh, that's a memorable Santa Claus, but not one that you would show your 5-year-old.
Oh, and we're going to be seeing one in a couple of weeks when we do Fat Man. That's a memorable but not kid-safe Santa.
And that's the question, is that when you go with kids safe, I mean, I was watching The Toy Soldiers with Abbott and Costello. Again, a safe portrayal of Santa Claus, but Santa Claus is never the center of it. He's always the character that's there. It's the plot that's going on around Santa that's supposed to draw the kids in after Santa itself.
Well,
but
I happen to know a version of Santa Claus played by Mr. Miyagi in a Babes in Toyland production with Keanu Reeves and whatnot. And he plays a toy master, which is the essential version of Santa Claus, Right. So that was a plain safe role.
Well, but a couple of good examples like that we keep like you guys have referenced repeatedly, Miracle on 34th Street, and I know we keep quoting the Ernest movie. In both of those cases, you had a Santa character who was a very safe Santa, but I feel like both of them had a chance to do more with the role. You know what I mean?
Santa didn't take center stage even in those movies, really, if you think about it. It was all about...
Yes, but he was more developed somehow, even though he was not the center. Yeah. But
I mean, There's Christmas, you watch that for Ernest.
You do.
Miracle on 34th Street, you watch it for... Well, you do watch it for the Santa at that point, but that's because Santa's going to court. But it's not really so much of Santa. Even this Santa, it's where you put him. I mean, Santa and Santa's Workshop, and occasionally in the real world, it wasn't as much of a safe bet. I mean, if you took the same character and you put him directly in the congressional hearings, maybe Patches landed him in front of the Senate and defend it, then you might say, okay, well, no, this is a more memorable Santa role. It's all about what they do. But this movie decided it was going to focus more on, you had said before, like, how is it that some of these characters got higher billing? It's because these characters were actually utilized more.
Yes and no. I mean, again, was it RZ, whatever the hell his name is, BZ? BZ doesn't even show up until well over an hour in. Patch is a background character until almost that point in the film.
But that's when the story gets
the film does what?
But that's when the story gets going, because really and truly,
the film does pull a little bit of a switcheroo. Basically, we get an hour of Santa Claus, and then it becomes. And it's also interesting that Santa and BZ never actually have a scene together in the whole movie. It's kind of.
So, yeah, it's more of a thing there. I mean, it's not like, say, even if that the Night the Reindeer Died was made, it wouldn't be like Santa that was the main character that everybody recognized, it would be, the $6 million man. Lee Majors. It would have been him. That would have been the all the where all the eyes are. Even the Santa would have been there the whole time with a shotgun firing away.
Speaking of what ifs, apparently the film was originally offered at some point to John Carpenter, and he wanted Brian Dennehy to play Santa. And I gotta say that would have been great casting too. But Huddleston, again, I'm not disparaging his performance. He does a great job, and it amused me to no end because I know him mainly as the Big Lebowski. It amused me to see him in the role because the Big Lebowski is much closer to BZ than he is to Santa.
Well, even the picture, even his IMDb portrait looks like BZ as opposed to
right.
But still, it's kind of fun seeing Santa Claus and the origins of such. But again, it's about looking at it from a kid's perspective.
One thing that's interesting to me in the background, Brandon, you're saying how much you love this and all, and how much you're a fan of Dudley Moore and everything. And apparently Dudley Moore called the movie a career killer, and sure, he has not headlined very many films since then.
Yeah, like Arthur too.
Yeah, I think that was his last big role, really.
You talk about a career killer.
Yeah, apparently he and Lithgow became buddies making this film, and they watched the movie together, and afterwards Moore was like, "Oh, that's a career killer."
Okay.
But it's like I said, though.
Career killer because I actually enjoy his role in here.
And I'll admit, this film is more suitable for kids than the Arthur movies.
Well, this version of Santa Claus is the one that I was used to. So, I don't remember any Santa Claus before this, except for the Santa Claus is Coming to Town. That actually was like a classic that you would watch around the Christmas holiday. So, to me, this was the first Santa Claus movie that mattered. Coming from that perspective, where they had never really done anything like this before. Actually, had a real life Santa Claus that wasn't Rankin based. So, and then of course I hear about some earlier films called, like, I think the Adventures of Santa Claus. Of course, variations of the Santa Claus have been made. It's just not so larger than life in the 80s. This was the Santa Claus of the 80s. And I would have to say the Miracle on 34th Street was the black and white version. That one was of the 50s and 60s. Even though I know it was made in the 40s. And the remake, I guess because they keep replaying it, was the 90s. And I think there was a different version of that in the 2000s too. But in any case, moving on to see, music was done by Henry Mancini. Yeah, the music was composed by Henry Mancini, which I know many of you have probably heard of him before, correct?
Oh, absolutely. He wrote one of the best music scores ever, the Pink Panther theme. But I will say, though, I hadn't noticed that going in. And then afterwards, I'm like, that was Henry Mancini? I mean, I gotta say, compared to what I'm used to from him, I was disappointed by the music in this movie. it's good, but compared to what I've heard from him, it's like, eh.
Okay. And then let's go into favorite character or characters and or favorite. Tammy, we haven't heard from you in a while. What was your favorite character and or characters, and who? What was your favorite scene or scenes?
Let's see. I think my favorite character was the little kid, Joe.
Okay.
I like Joe. I thought he was like, you know, kind of what in a way embodies Christmas, because he was a poor little kid out on the streets, and here comes Santa, and you know it's what Christmas is about. Santa, you know, makes them believe again, makes them believe in dreams, and he takes them. You know, he doesn't even shower them with gifts or anything. He just pays attention to them, takes them out in the sleigh, does you know, and you know, and makes them believe again, and you know, and how Joe befriended this little girl that you know they're definitely from one's from one side of the tracks, the one's from the other, you know, and but you know they had a connection, and it was I thought it was a sweet connection, you know. It's I really liked him. And I guess my favorite scene would be when he took the sleigh for a ride, because he really took that sleigh for a ride. It reminded me of the day that I got my driver's license for real. Not that I wasn't driving beforehand, but my best friend told me that I could take his 1972 Chevelle for a ride the day that I got my license. Yep, I took it for a ride. So
Okay.
yes, that was my favorite.
Okay. How about you, Brandon? Favorite character and or favorite scene?
Well, I like Patch. He's always been my favorite character as a kid, and I still am loving the character. The favorite scene, I don't know. Maybe that like for free thing always hits me in the right way.
Okay. What about you, Jake? If you could take anything from this film, what would be your favorite scene and or favorite character?
Favorite character. If we're talking like favorites, there I'm tempted to say that the kids, Joe and Cornelia, might be my favorites. Santa himself is quite likable too. BZ is by far the most interesting character. I wouldn't call him a favorite, but he's definitely the most interesting one. And I would say my favorite scene would be a toss-up between his free reaction and his that initial scene in the where he's testifying before Congress. Like probably those two scenes.
Okay. I'm going to have to go with my favorite character being Santa Claus. And I like Joe. I like the little girl. I like him just fine. This was my favorite Santa Claus for many years, up until Tim Allen did it in the Santa Claus, which I saw that one in the theaters. I tend to, when it comes to Santa Claus, this is what I think Santa Claus should look like and should always look like, and should always react like. If I wanted to go sit on Santa Claus's lap, I would rather sit on this man's lap. But I know that's kind of a myth that kids like to do, but just to see if it's real. But
I doubt it's a myth. But
I'm sure kids still do it. But I like the entire origin story, and I love the moments in the workshop, particularly Season's greetings. There's something about that whole ceremony. Even Patch as when was asking about things, he's like, "Oh, wait until Season's greetings. Oh, you'll see." Just the whole fact that the elves came to him and were like, "Hey, you're gonna live forever, and this is your new home, and we're here to tell you you've been prophesized. We've been waiting for you." Something about that origin story just speaks to me. So that's why I brought this film to the table, and I think it is always magical every time I watch it, and I have a lot of nostalgia for it. So maybe I'm singing its praises a little bit, but I think it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. But in any case, did anyone else have anything else to add? Alrighty. Well, thank you for joining us. If there's any of you guys that are watching, let us know down in the comments what you thought of our discussion. Definitely come back with us next week, as we are going to be continuing the holiday days with some holiday-like films.
A very serious drama about a Christmas shark called Santa Jaws. One that would definitely be a true artistic piece for Jacob.
So,
I can hardly wait.
I think at this point we shall go around and tell you our outros. So, Tammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
David's fiance. I go on this channel and another one with him and talk about movies and listen to what everybody else thinks about them. And I have my own collection. And at this time of year, that's about all I got going on.
Alrighty. So, heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Kotobukijake. I am the occasional co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus World, although hasn't been much going on with it lately. But also I have a whole lot of other stuff going on most of the time, and keep pretty busy, but I do. As you can tell by my yawning. But I do try to always get stuff to watch so I can join these fine folks here for our discussions. And definitely the holidays always bring some interesting ones up for discussion. Of course, we did also actually have a... on the other channel, we did have an anime discussion this past week on Sketchbook Full Colors, so check that out if you haven't already. And yeah, that's all I got for you this go around.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
SeptumSin is SeptumSin versus the world. We actually are doing, well, really, it's more me because anytime I get Jacob together now, we're working on Dave's film. But I am doing a show that's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday up until Christmas this year, which is Unusual Christmas Chronicles, which every episode I cover a movie that is in the either low budget sphere or out of the public eye to make suggestions that may not fall under the typical. The first two that I did up were A Meowie Christmas and A Meowie Christmas Vacation. And I've got two more Steve Rudzinski ones that are coming up as well for that, but it's not going to be all his dealing because I've got a couple others that I'm going to suggest, like 13 Sleighs of Christmas and so on. So some fun stuff to look forward to, at least in the holidays.
Okay. And my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulously holiday spirit like that we are finding ourselves in as we count our blessings towards the Christmas Eve that we know is coming up eventually. So hopefully you guys are enjoying the festive atmosphere, especially since for a lot of you, your holiday cheer started months before Christmas even began. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I typically go on every Sunday, kind of doing a similar jaunt with some fellow film enthusiasts, where we are going to be going on about a film this Sunday that I still have to find out from Kroll exactly what we're doing. But I'm sure I'll know within the next couple of days.
Are y'all going to cover the Rocky series for Christmas?
No. That was a horrible Halloween last year. But I think we had a better Halloween this year. So hopefully it drowns out the Adrian! No, just kidding. But I do some video pickups and video reviews from time to time. And lately I've been doing some online gameplay on the Delusions of Grandeur channel. So not necessarily walkthroughs, but I have beaten a game and am actually trying to beat a game every time I go on and try to record my gameplay on. Since I finally realized the PlayStation you gave me, Brandon, or actually that I bought from you, actually records all my gameplay. So, so check out some of that if you like. And
If you dare.
We definitely are. I think we're almost done with the first cut, the rough cut of the first act of Tales of the Forgotten. So, hopefully I'll be able to show that to you guys soon. Once it's fully completed, then I'll maybe start trying to figure out a T-shirt and a poster for it to be printed. It's hard to find some of those types of places that do that type of thing. So I'll be looking around.
You need to do a Kaneki store for your stuff so that you can have like all of them on one place.
I'd love to do that, but there are. I tried to do that with something. Well, I'll look around and see what's there. I guess we lost our.
Jake was so upset he left.
Yeah. But in any case, definitely like, share, and subscribe. Let us know down in the comments what you thought, and we wish you a Merry Christmas. So everyone say good night.
Good to not.
Good night.
Brandon.